more and more studies are coming out in terms of how to manipulate your dietary choices to maximize the results long term if you're on these GLP-1s.
Use it as a kickstart. It is not a shortcut. You've still got to get back to the behaviors that are going to deliver health span.
Because you're not hungry and you are gonna drop calories. But if you're not consuming the right calories of the ones you do consume, then you are really setting your body up for so much frailty down the road.
Thermodynamics is not the answer. Period. End of story. We failed at it for 50 years now. Understanding your hormones and their reaction are the same.
Whether it means you have to lose weight and you have to gain strength and you have to sleep better, at the end of the day, all of that ends up being you being a nicer, kinder, better person to the world around you. Welcome back to the 90% Healthy Podcast. How are you, Don?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Doing good. I've had quite a bit of travel the past couple of weekends, so I'm allowing my body and nervous system to reset just a tad.
Your trip to Albuquerque looked really interesting. I got to tell you, I had some FOMO going.
It was interesting. I never thought, in my career that I would be interviewing somebody who's literally played major roles in peace around the world and just really having such an impact globally. And yet such a kind person,
No ego whatsoever.
No.
None.
No.
No. And I think that's something we all can learn from. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen, so I interviewed Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar, who is this humanitarian, very well recognized spiritual leader. And I have to say that it was very interesting the way he talks about the problems in our lives and how to kind of overcome in meditation and breath work. He has a wit to him, like he still has humor. So the audience is engaged and there's laughter. So it's not that sort of fear-mongering way of getting you to do something, but rather through lightness and joy, which is really refreshing.
The fear-mongering way to get you to do something. What an interesting, now maybe that's a whole nother episode that we can light some people up on. But yeah, it looked really interesting. And I first of all, Albuquerque's a great little town. I've worked for 2 different companies there, and I've enjoyed almost every minute I've spent in town. Are you a green chili or are you a red chili person? That is the question when you go to Albuquerque. Green or red?
I'm a no chili person.
Oh my goodness. So 2 things for the audience. Number 1, it's definitely a bucket list trip to get to Albuquerque for the balloon festival. The balloon festival there is in the fall. It's in September. It is outstanding. I mean, hundreds of hot air balloons, and they fly in what's called the box. The way the is that, what river is that? The way that, is it the Colorado? Anyway, river comes down through town. It's got the Sandia Mountains that come up besides town. And it creates this what's called the box. So a hot air balloon goes up, it flies north, it comes down, it flies south, and you can fly in the box all day or for a long period of time. So watching balloons fly in the box is really cool. But then there's a really good hike from the foothills of Albuquerque up in the Sandias up to the top of the Sandia Mountains. There's a restaurant up there. It used to be called High Finance, but it's called the Lalouse Trail. What a great hike. And we got to do that hike during Balloon Festival. So we'd stop along the way and you had this great view of the balloons and all the stuff going on. So yeah, Albuquerque is, I don't know why it's not, I don't know why I don't live there yet. Because I've had so much fun there.
I wish I had talked to you before I went. I mean, I did talk to you, but I mean, it's not like I had a lot of time. I had literally just one night. But that sounds really good. Next time I go there, I want to go to the hike. And
Now
also, I did visit a little biohacking spot.
Okay.
And it was awesome. And turned out it was literally one of the first in the country The
Really?
owner, Dan, opened it 8 years ago.
Good for him. Good, good.
Like it was
Yeah, there's
literally
a
probably
lot
the
of
same year.
progressive health people, a lot of good meditation, a lot of good holistic medicine providers. You get a really there's a great athletics. I mean, after Boulder, Colorado, Albuquerque is the second most dense population of elite athletes in the United States because Albuquerque sits at about 5,000 feet, which is similar to Denver and Boulder. But then you can climb, or you can go up to Santa Fe, and Taos and get even higher. Um, little traveling hack that you like. So there's a train that runs from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, and then I think it goes beyond. It may go on the Tahoe, I think. But one of my favorite trips, I was out there on a business trip. I stayed in a hotel up in Santa Fe. I would take the train down in the morning, which is this 1 hour train ride out in the middle of the mesa. I mean, you're riding along, and here's a coyote out there laying on top of a rock. It reminds you of the old Bugs Bunny, the Coyote, and Roadrunner stuff because you could see them both.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would go down and work down in Albuquerque downtown. The office we were in was right next to the train station, and I'd kick the train back at night, and usually grab some kind of a dynamite. I mean, the food scene in Santa Fe is elite. It is outstanding. Oh, yeah, the food scene in Santa Fe is one of the best in the country. So
Huh.
that's my little travel hack is stay up in Santa Fe, take the train down, work down in Albuquerque during the day, and then turn around and go back up there at night. But it's one of my favorite places.
That's very cool. I was talking to a few of the Uber drivers as I was going from A to B,
Hmm.
and they all said that they also like the climate, how it does get hot, but it doesn't get as hot as like Arizona does.
No, yeah,
And
you
the
remember you're
winter
up at
is
five
pretty
thousand
mild.
feet. You're high desert there. Um, and
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And the other cool thing about it in the winter time, like we were up in Santa Fe in the winter, and we get 6 inches of snow one night. But you're sleeping with the sliding door of your room open, even though
Yeah.
it's snowing outside, and then the snow melts the next day pretty quickly. But there's pretty good skiing up in Taos, Angel Fire. There's pretty good skiing up there. It's good ski. It's a challenging mountain. It's not an easy mountain to ski. It's not like, the big wide runs in Colorado.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a really cool environment.
Nice.
So
Albuquerque is not as boring as I thought.
it's not just a line in a Bugs Bunny movie. I hung a right in
No.
Albuquerque. Um, so are you? Did you even watch Bugs Bunny growing up? Come on.
Yes, that I did.
Okay. Okay. So
That
I
I did.
just
So I
I got to
understood all
keep
your
the
references.
I got to keep the cultural references at least relevant, for my European host.
When I was looking up in terms of what it's about Albuquerque, it was interesting to see how it is at a higher elevation
Hmm.
and how people might have problems with oxygen being thinner if they're higher elevation, but it's not that high.
You know what's funny about that, Claudia? We've talked about my little discovery that when we
Yes.
were out in Lake
Yeah, that's what
Tahoe,
made me
how
think of
how
it.
my numbers took off, and
Yeah.
I almost, whether it's Aura or Now Watch or any of these people that are out there, I don't know if they're measuring altitude, but for
Mm.
me, the altitude that I am at makes a difference in my health. And maybe that's one of the reasons I like
Yeah.
Albuquerque and Santa Fe so much is it kind of gets me up into that because that's about the same altitude as Lake Tahoe. Um,
Mhm.
and and
Okay.
and I got it, Claudia, for God, Laura and I have been married now for 35 years. We started dating
Hmm.
2 years before that. So we were skiing in Colorado 36, 37 years ago. Um, I fell
Okay.
in love with the mountains back then. And and I wasn't sure if it was just visual. Was it the fact of the visual aspect of that? But and that and now that our daughter has grown and moved out and we're starting to explore where our next home is going to be, um it's been really interesting on this nomadic lifestyle that we're in, seeing the impact of altitude. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting. And I need to reach out to some friends of mine over at Aura and my friends over at Now Watch, just to say, you know what, you might want to plug some altitude information into your collection. Listen, you can pull that right off your smartphone. My
Pretty
smartphone
cool.
tells me my altitude all the time. But to see, if that was something I could choose to track, I would probably do that.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I ever really lived at a high altitude. No, not really.
No, this has been and so we're going to get ready and go back. Now, I'll tell you, Sedona climbs up there. Sedona's about 4,000, 5,000 feet, Um and
Okay.
and listen, God, if you ever wake up in Sedona and you get to walk outside and see those red rocks in the sunshine, there's nothing like it. Um but you throw a little bit of
Yes.
altitude in
I
there
visited
too.
once, so I agree.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's I don't
Yeah.
think there's a prettier
It's
place to
beautiful.
wake up in the morning than Sedona, Arizona.
I mean, when I was in Santorini, it was a really pretty view to wake up to.
Santorini. Okay. Um, it's not
Okay,
Albuquerque.
well, we're not
It's
talking about
not
travel today,
Albuquerque.
but
Um,
no. But I think we could do an episode on travel hacks and just how
yeah,
to get through jet lag and really optimize your travel through practices and not just the supplements, but there are some practices that, people talk about
sure.
to minimize your physiological overwhelm.
Because there's
Anyhow,
a lot of stress, a lot of
yeah, for some reason,
distress.
yes, a lot of distress. Every time I travel, by the second day, I tend to get a headache. And I don't know
Mm,
if it's the hotel or what it is, but
yeah,
I
I
haven't been able to hack that.
I get it. That's
All right, today we're talking about GLP-1. I know we had this topic before, but we're going to talk about a specific study that came out just recently that you, Don, sent me. And it was very interesting to see how more and more studies are coming out in terms of how to manipulate your dietary choices to maximize the results long term if you're on these GLP-1s. Particularly, this study was on tirzepatide.
tirzepatide. Yep,
Am I pronounced
yep.
tirzepatide? Yes. And it looked at the comparison between what if you're on a low calorie diet along with this medication, or you are on a low energy ketogenic diet. So under 30 grams of carbs a day, moderate protein, and high fat. But both groups were on the 1,200 calorie per day diet, which is a lower calorie for most people.
Hmm.
And the results were very interesting and showed that the ketogenic diet had a far better outcome within that 12-week period than just going on low calorie. And I think it's important for those of the people who may be playing around with these tools like GLP-1s, because you're not hungry and you are going to drop calories. But if you're not consuming the right calories of the ones you do consume, then you are really setting your body up for so much frailty down the road.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think the challenge is this: is that we've Klaudia, I started, I when I first went to college back in 1980, was my freshman year walking on the campus at Ohio State. I had every intention of going home and feeding beef cattle at that time. I actually have a bachelor's degree in animal science. I was planning on going home and being a
Oh,
farmer. But I fell in love with human physiology. In my quest to be a better athlete, I kind of started studying human physiology and wound up changing directions completely. Wound up, listen, I had to sit through one ag econ class to figure out it's practically impossible to make a living farming.
yeah.
And so the question is, what do you do with the rest of your life? And so we fall into this, and I swear to God, we've been talking about weight loss the whole time and failing at weight loss. We've been given the same thermodynamic explanation: burn more calories than you take in. Thermodynamics is not the answer. period, end of story. We failed at it for 50 years now. It is a hormones are the study. Understanding your hormones and their reaction are the study. And now with GLP-1s and GIPs and a lot of these different combinations that are coming together, that the general public has a real shot at achieving weight loss and significant weight loss. So I don't want to minimize that at all. That is so important. And when we look at the after effect of, I personally don't think weight loss in and of itself is the beneficial health effect. Okay, it's part of it. It's not drawing on it, but the process.
It's more like the side effect.
Yeah, and health. We've talked about rocks in the jars. Where does health come from? It comes from movement. It comes from nutrient-dense food. It comes from good sleep. It comes from light on your skin, nutritive light, not toxic light, and it comes from having a goal. Those are our 4 rocks in the jar. But there's a lot of people that have tried to lose weight, haven't been able to do it, and all of a sudden GLP-1s are delivering for them, and that's, I don't want to minimize that at all. But when you look at GLP-1s, number one, they're only recommended for use for 3 months. Okay, that they're not recommended for long-term use, and there's some issues. I don't think the issues are that negative. I don't think we're seeing anything right now that says, oh, don't go past this point or you're going off a cliff. I don't think that's happening. But what we are seeing is that they're delivering the goal of weight loss without the investment of the other healthy practices. Okay, exercise, movement, strength training, things like that. So this is one of the things we want to pay attention to. What's going on? What needs to be there hand in hand? Number one. And number two is, as we take a look at this, what are the processes that GLP-1 supplementation facilitate, help you over? When we talk about hormones, another peptide hormone is insulin. If your pancreas doesn't make insulin, you have to take insulin 24/7, 365. It's part of your life. That's how you survive. If you don't, if your pancreas does make insulin, you want to be careful about how much you take externally. And I think this is one of the problems with the medical industry is your sugar's high, let's give them insulin. I don't think that's the right answer at all. But, and I think there's a lot of docs out there that'll back me up on that. But, and so when we say, hey, we need to get some weight loss going, let's get some GLP-1s in there, there's some really nice benefits, lower inflammation. There's just great things, improve cardiovascular response, improve cardiovascular disease. There's a lot of really cool things. But let's take a second and talk about what process is being replaced by supplementing the GLP-1s. What do you say?
Yes, please, let's talk about it.
Okay.
I'm interested.
Because I want to talk about 2 things. I want to talk about that process, number one. But on number 2, I also want to talk about ketones, because this study talks about a ketogenic diet. And I don't think the general public, I actually think there's a negative connotation to the ketogenic diet. People hear that and they're like, and they think of Atkins. Okay. And I get it. I grew up in the middle of that. But all a ketone body is the byproduct of fat metabolism. That you have fat in your system. They're stored in what's called triglycerides. Triglycerides start to get broken down, and they break down to what a little molecule is called acetyl-CoA. And acetyl-CoA is critical in your energy, in your cellular energy pathways. It's really important. But that acetyl-CoA can then become a ketone body, and there's actually 3 of them that we deal with. The big one that we really want to pay attention to is what's called beta-hydroxybutyrate, BHB. This is what we measure when we do a finger stick ketone body measurement, like Keto Mojo. We're measuring beta-hydroxybutyrate. Beta-hydroxybutyrate is a wonderful molecule. It really makes you sharp. It just there's lots of good things to go with it. So when you're losing fat, you're producing ketone bodies, and beta-hydroxybutyrate is one of the big byproducts. Another one is called acetone. This is a classic, molecule from your chemistry. But if you use a device to measure ketone bodies with breath, you're actually measuring acetone. And they have a nice relationship. There's a nice relationship between acetone levels and beta hydroxybutyrate levels. Listen, I'm an insulin resistant human. I am very efficient in my and I've been dealing with blood sugar issues for 40 years. Yeah, a little longer than I've been married now that I think about it. But and I'm sick of sticking my fingers. I get tired of it. And so when you say, "Oh, use Keto Mojo," I'm just like, "No, thank you. I'm way beyond that." So, and I use the breath. I love the breath devices. Acetylacetate is the third ketone body. So if you measure ketones with a urine stick, you're measuring acetylacetate. Now, that is not quite the relationship between acetylacetate and beta hydroxybutyrate is not nearly as tight as it is between acetone. There's a little bit of a drop off, but the nice thing about measuring ketones with urine is it's dirt cheap. Those strips are really, and they give you a pretty good picture. Are you in ketosis? Ketosis, the process of making ketones. Are you in ketosis? Oh, by the way, when you're using GLP-1s and your appetite's dropped and you're not taking in as many calories and you're losing fat, you're creating ketones. Okay, that's part of the process. You'll be ketogenic. So that's the important part about this is recognize that measuring ketones is like measuring how much gas is in the tank. What's my flow rate? Am I losing fat? Ketone bodies are wonderful. We're recording this on July 10th right now during the Tour de France, and I'm kind of a cycling nut. It's one of my favorite sports, so I've been watching a lot of the Tour de France. 70% of the peloton is using beta hydroxybutyrate supplementation. They're supplementing ketone bodies, and I'll tell you, the performance that comes from it is ridiculous. I mean, it's a legitimate performance enhancing supplement.
Yeah, it's because it is a much more efficient way for the body to use energy. So it's not just a quick spike; it's more sustainable and longer term. Like
and no insulin response. This is one of the big mistakes that people make and athletes make is they eat this big heavy sugared meal before an event, or they load their system with sugar, insulin goes up, shuts down the acceptance of that, and a lot of times you wind up crashing. So, you put a ketone in there, you're raising energy, you're keeping insulin low, and man, that engine is just running full bore. So, so we want to spend a little bit of time talking about ketone bodies. Now, let's go across to GLP-1s, or GLPs. Where does it come from? Well, I was just listening to my friend Nawaz Habib's podcast, who we're going to have on our podcast, so look forward to this. And he was talking about the vagal nerve and GLP-1s. And what we know is that the stomach and the stomach lining have sensors in it. So when you put food in your stomach, it causes the stomach to stretch. And one of the signals from this is increased glucagon-like proteins. Okay, this is the natural process of lowering appetite when you eat. This is the reason it's important to chew your food. This is why, and okay, I am absolute I eat like a Hoover. Okay, I take food in faster than you can imagine, and that's not good for me. It's probably a problem. But slowing down your eating, getting this, you get the vagal nerve involved. When the vagal nerve's involved, you're going into rest and digest. That's the parasympathetic side of this. And so having good vagal nerve tone, being able to lower stress or the perception of stress or how you deal with stress, gives your body the ability to utilize your natural GLP hormones. Okay. So part of this is recognizing that we can kickstart a process using the supplementation of the GLP-1 agonists, but we can also take a look at our natural physiology and say, okay, how do we get the best out of what we're already doing? Because it's there, it's naturally there. Our challenge is that our dietary habits. Klaudia, I grew up with there was three of us, two brothers, three boys. Okay. I was the smallest boy in the family. Okay. And if you didn't get what you wanted to eat the first time through the kitchen, there was not a second trip. Okay. You got what you went through and you got, and my mom and dad were both big people too. So literally food for us was a ritual, I mean, it was like grab and growl. I mean, it was kind of like a wolf pack. So that's a habit that you develop. Okay.
Yeah.
And I can gorf food there, and I have a habit of. My wife looks at me, she's like, "Well, did you need a straw for that?" When we're sitting there eating something.
I'm gonna use that line.
Yeah, I'll trust me. I've taken it a few times. Um, and but
Oh,
that
that is
that
hilarious.
develops a habit. The habit interferes with my GLP's ability to influence. By that time, I've overconsumed. Instead of stopping at 80% full, I'm into 120% full. And all the
Yeah.
downside things that come with that. So this is what's so important about this is understanding the difference between appetite, what resolves appetite, ketogenics, which is so important. And then we start to layer in the importance of strength and exercise on top of that, which is another hormonal impact. Okay. So that was kind of a deep dive. Let's go back up to the top.
So let me reiterate what you said about slowing down eating and allowing your body to rest and digest while you're consuming food. So just that calm state of you eating in a calm state will help upregulate GLP-1 or innate GLP-1?
It'll help it'll upregulate vagal nerve activity. Okay. So we want that vagus nerve kicking us over into parasympathetic state, that rest and digest state. We want the vagal nerve to get
Yes.
that. So the vagal nerve is always going to prioritize stress over recovery. Um, it's always going to say, hey, it's more important for you to get away from the lion than it is for you to digest. If you don't get away from the lion, I mean, we're now talking about GLP-1s
Yeah.
in the lion's belly, not yours. Um, but yeah, it's always going to shift to stress first. Bless you. It's always going to shift to stress
Thank you.
first. But as we lower the sympathetic, the fight or flight or freeze response, and we upregulate the parasympathetic, all of a sudden digestion comes around naturally, and our GLPs and our other digestive hormones can do what they need to do.
So that's why you shouldn't be watching the news or scrolling on your phone while you're having dinner, because that will definitely not put you in rest and digest.
I don't know if I'm becoming an old fogey or what, but there's very little on my phone anymore that when you first get smartphones, you start to do it and you start to roll into some of these programs, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. There's so much shit out there. I don't even want to look at my phone half the time or go into social media or stuff like that. And I've said this before. If you comment on our videos, or if you comment, I'll tell you, I've gone in and seen some of the comments. If you comment negatively, if you want to comment negatively, send me a note directly. Send me an email. Tell me what your problem is, but don't be a troll, okay? Because if you're trolling on social media, I'm not reading it. It's not. I do not have time for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thankfully, we're not on Reddit. That's where all the
Oh,
mean people go.
oh, oh. Well, and we live this nomadic lifestyle, in this RV lifestyle. You want to talk about trolls, okay? These people are flat ass mean, and I'm just like,
Oh
good
boy.
God, wake up in the morning and smell the coffee and see the sunshine and try and enjoy life a little bit. But yeah, just don't, be nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for some people it's really hard. And they're usually fighting their inner demons 24/7. That's why they can't be nice to other people.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So I don't go there, but you're right. the more we can do. And I struggle with this a little bit, frankly, Klaudia. And so I'm talking to a couple of people about this. The word stress, and what does the word, lower your stress? Well, there's good stress and there's bad stress. I want a lot of good stress. As soon as we finish recording, I'm going to put in a big session of good stress. I'm going to get on my bike. I'm going to do a good workout. I'm probably going to lift afterwards.
Nice.
I'm going to do good stress. I'll tell you, politics right now, I've got the TV turned off a lot, mainly because there's nothing I can do about it right now. Okay. We had our election. It didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but bitching about it right now doesn't change the world for me. Okay. We got to wait another year and a half for the next election. Then I'll engage. Okay. And then we'll go another 2 years after that, and I'll engage again when it can really make a difference. But for right now, keeping my head down, not, just like, okay, let's see how this goes. Hopefully it'll go well. I'm not exactly optimistic, but hopefully it goes well. But until then, I'm keeping my mouth shut and keeping my head down.
Yeah, you can just only, mitigate what you can control, and none of that you can't right now.
That's my daughter gives us on a regular basis, control the controllables. That is not a controllable, and bitching about it doesn't make life better.
Right. It doesn't. That's what I don't understand. Some people complain about things all the time, and I'm like, does it really make you feel better? Like, I just don't understand.
There's a dopamine. It probably does, Klaudia. It does. There's a dopamine that when you go,
does.
Yes, when you go sympathetic, the body's saying survive. So it's going to be feeding you survival hormones, the serotonins and the dopamines and things like that. The same as if you're being chased by a lion. Okay. It's the same process. So yeah, they do get off on it. But you can also get off on being nice and being kind. And
I think so.
We started our conversation with your trip to Albuquerque, and here's someone who is incredibly kind, who is teaching this. And I think that, the world we want to live in gets better when we decide to be nice and be kind and treat other humans as if they're humans and not animals, and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't even know if you and I are going to live that day, or if it ever happen.
It's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Maybe the fundamental flaw in the human
GLP-1s.
experience. Yeah.
Back to GLP-1s. I wanted to highlight some of the results which will lead to why having a higher fat, moderate protein can really maximize the benefits of GLP-1s. And that's just how much the study has shown that the group that had the low-calorie diet had a negative 4.3, so 4.3% fat-free mass loss, meaning muscle loss.
Which is
in comparison,
not good.
It's a lot. In comparison, the ketogenic diet group only lost 0.5%. So there's a massive difference in how much muscle mass you lost. And then the same difference goes on to the muscle strength category. The low-calorie group lost 4.1% muscle strength. The ketogenic category group lost 0.3%. And it's just so much, it brings the attention to the very relevant point where a lot of physicians and functional medicine doctors talk about who prescribe these, that you cannot get the benefits out of GLP-1s long term if you are not doing protein. And I don't know whether these people trained at all, but protein, to say the least, just to maintain muscle mass.
No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. When you're doing a GLP-1, there's two things you've got to make sure, and you've got to really shift your focus to getting adequate levels of protein in. If you get adequate levels of protein in, you will preserve muscle mass. And again, so as our listeners, your muscle are stored, protein stored, amino acids,
yes.
And these are critical throughout our body's biology. They create enzymes, they create sensors. They create all kinds. And if you're not bringing them in dietarily, your body's going to say, oh, I've got some of this stored over here in some muscle mass. It's going to go get it. It's going to bring it in, and it's going to use that muscle mass. And that's the reason you have that loss of muscle mass with the very low calorie diet. So no doubt, you got to get your proteins. Number two, you got to get your fiber levels up. There's no doubt that anyone who uses or anyone who has used GLP-1s will know constipation. In the absence of good fiber, you'll get constipated. It's rather unpleasant. It's a challenge. You got to get the fiber levels up. Omega-3 fats, driving down inflammation. So many of our challenges from a health standpoint, from a performance standpoint, are mitigated or limited by inflammation. It's one of the beauties of the GLP-1s is they lower inflammation, particularly at a microdose level. I know a lot of people that microdose this stuff, keep the inflammation down. So all of a sudden the vagal nerve is performing the way it's supposed to. Listen, when we start our podcast, when we start talking about this, again, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I know I go back to vagal nerve and HRV on a regular basis, and it's not just because it's a nail and all I have is a hammer. It is a king indicator. It's a key performance indicator. It's one of those things, and understanding the vagal nerve behavior is going to be key to understanding how do we get the most out of life? How do we get to that 90% level? And, and for someone who may be like an athlete or who's shooting for 100%, it's got to be even more intense. But for the rest of us out there that's not trying to win an Olympic gold medal, it's nice to have that 90% there. And you've got to pay attention to what's going on with the vagal nerve, with your autonomic nervous system, autonomic balance. There's so much of this that's affecting health and performance today that we can't ignore it.
Yeah, and it's just really strikes me how much people love the shortcuts, and these GLP-1s are a shortcut. A lot of people who tried a lot of things never achieved the amount of results they are getting with these GLP-1s. But I worry that there's not enough. I mean, there's more education coming out and more studies are coming out with the right way of doing it. But still, I think a lot of people will have some bounce back and some kickback off of what they did and if they didn't do the right way. Before we started, I kind of looked it up, what the numbers are around these GLP-1s. And I found that with semaglutide and tirzepatide, it's only 3% of the eligible patients are prescribed. So it's a very small amount of people who are on these, yet a lot more are eligible. And we know that a lot more people are dealing with metabolic issues, which this can be an answer for if used correctly.
Absolutely.
So, and it's already like a $50-60 billion for just Lilly. And
it's going to get bigger.
Mind-blowing.
It's going to get bigger.
Yeah.
Because it's good, it works, and you're right. And I think the trick is don't use it as a shortcut. Use it as a kickstart.
Mm-hmm.
If I really hope that our only goal isn't just to look good, perception look good. Our goal is to, I know you and I think in these terms. You're a longevity journalist. I'm an exercise physiologist and sports scientist. I don't think lifespan in the absence of health span is worth it. Okay. It's all about, in my mind, it's all about health span. If lifespan comes with that, then great. But it's all about health span, number one. Number two is, when we start to look at that, okay, what are the processes that go into this? What are our challenges? How's our environment limiting us from this? And yes, use it as a kickstart. But it is not a shortcut. It is not the end all be all. You've still got to get back to the behaviors that are going to deliver health span. And deliver quality of life and deliver the physical capacity to enjoy the life you're given. We before we started taping, we were talking about your trip to Albuquerque and how rough a day trip is, and how that affects our numbers and so forth. And I've been doing this for 35 years and looking at these same kind of numbers, and you can see it. I don't know how people travel months at a time. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
You pay a huge price.
Yeah, it's a mess. Or even just flight attendant.
Oh, well, there. I'll tell you a funny story there. I'm flying. This is back before 9/11. This is back, and there was a year of my life where I flew 50 weeks in that year. Okay, in that calendar year, I flew every week except 2. And I'm flying back from somewhere. It was back on the old America West, which became Northwest, which became American, and I'm sitting next to at this time I'm flying. So I always sit in the front of the plane. I've got platinum status on like 2 different airlines, and I always sit on front, and I've got this flight attendant sitting next to me. And we're talking about what he does and what his day looks like. And I said, God, what is it like to get off work and then not think about work anymore? There's a certain beauty there. And I love what I do. I love it. But I think about it 24/7. There's really no downtime for me.
Yeah.
And I think you're probably a little bit like that. Now, when I get up to Lake Tahoe and I'm sitting there looking at the lake, or when I get out on my skis, I get out on, when I'm out on my bike, I tend to break it a little bit. But as soon as it's broken, the neurons come together, and there's some new thoughts, and I'm making notes as soon as I get home. But yeah, the flight attendant thing, I think it can be challenging, but it's not like flight attendants are all getting cancer and dying. I don't know that the actual act of flying on the plane is as toxic as we think it is. Dealing with people can be toxic. Flying on the plane, sleeping in beds that aren't your bed, can be challenging. But the ability to turn the mind from sympathetic, fight or flight, challenging, the kind of, the mean stuff, to parasympathetic, refreshing, get some breaths in, go ahead and get reset. That cycle is so important.
It is very important. And to your point, I do notice that I don't think my career where I will be the type that I can just leave and not think about it. Because the things I listen to are things that I end up talking about. The people I talk to will end up being perhaps sources for my articles. So there's always something that has to do with, it's like I live and breathe what I do. And like you said, yes, when I do my workouts or do something, I do, switch that part of my brain off, or it's not active as much as it is when we're talking or I'm researching or writing. But at the same time, I never leave work at work, especially that my work is the guest bedroom.
Yeah.
So
do you listen to a
it,
lot of music when you work out?
I do listen to music when I work out. Yeah.
That's my break. When
Yeah.
that when I'm starting to work out, I used to listen to some podcasts back when I was doing zone 2 work. Mainly because I just needed time to get I need the time to get in. Now nearly any time I start working out, I've usually got it's usually some kind of a hard driving rock and roll kind of a thing back in the day, and it helps me create that break. And so come out of my workout and then ready to go.
It's definitely EDM for me.
Oh,
the
really?
European. Yeah.
That's just culture.
Yes. And also I wanted to, I noted down a couple of things when you were talking about the health span aspect, which I completely agree. The fact that in this country, as much as we live to like mid 70s, the last 10 years for a lot of people is just complete misery and in pain and polypharmacy and all of that. And the health span is just so much more important than lifespan. And not only having the quality of life, because one of the things I asked about when I was in Albuquerque this weekend talking to the spiritual leader was, what's the point of living a long life? And he says that, yes, it's quality. And second, it's only quality if you are useful to other people and you're making an impact. The purpose, the jar purpose was 100% his main thing. You gotta have that in order to have meaning to your life and really make it worthy of your time to extend it. If you're just constantly thinking about yourself, what's the point? Like, you've got to dedicate a mission to be useful to other people.
That would be the jar, huh? That you have a mission in life. There's a reason to wake up, and I don't know that you've ever told me your personal mission. I know when I was living in Florida and I was struggling, when I was at Ohio State as a sports scientist, I thought that was my last job. I didn't think I would ever work another job. I thought I was done there. Well, the universe obviously had something else in mind, and all of a sudden I'm living down in Florida working in the cannabis industry, and I'm like, how do I go from this really cool job working with Olympic medalists and national champions to selling weed in Florida? Because at the end of the day, that's what it was. And I put together my personal mission, and you've probably heard me say it. It's to help individuals understand the changes necessary to alleviate suffering and contribute to the betterment of well people. If I can do something to alleviate suffering, and if I can do something to help you achieve your goals, you know what? That makes my day really good. I got a call yesterday from one of the athletes I coached back in the early 90s. She was a volleyball player, and Tracy calls me. Oh, I can get a call from her about every month. She's now raised children. She's got a child that's playing professional volleyball in Europe. She's got a son that's a tremendous baseball player. She married a swimmer so you had some genetics that are just off the chain there.
Oh, wow.
But we have these long conversations, or one of my students from Urbana, who's now an assistant lacrosse coach up at the University of Michigan. Even though it is our arch rival, that's still she's my kid, she's my daughter, and if I can do something to change to help them achieve the greatness that they're working towards, I'll do that every day. I love that. And we're constantly looking for new tools. This is how we came across Nawaz Habib, that like I said earlier, we'll have on the podcast, in vagal nerve stimulation. So it's another aspect of this. I've reached out to a couple other people that I'm excited. I don't have dates yet, but I've got a couple people lined up to come on the podcast that I think our listeners will just love. So, yeah, those are the people I talk to that I help change other people's lives.
Yeah, and I think in this industry where you and I are, a lot of the people who we talk to or interact with or really connect with all have a mission that's larger than themselves.
You hope so.
They all want to help people to a degree. And I figured out my mission, my why, back in 2017 when I was moving back from grad school from London, and that was to help people understand and optimize their health one story at a time.
That's cool.
And that I go back and forth between health or healthspan, just because of the longevity aspect of all the things that I cover these days. But at the end of the day, it stemmed from my view of seeing how much confusion there is out there and how much power journalists and the media has for what people think about what health is. So I wanted to set out to create content and tell stories that are easy to understand, digestible, and practical, so people can really make it their own and figure out their journey for themselves. And and that's been leading everything I do, and it's been wonderful.
It's easy. It's easy to wake up with that, isn't it?
Yes, and it's so easy to make decisions once you know your why. And I think that's why I would recommend everybody to take the time to figure out their purpose, their mission, and really just to know what it is that they are here for. Because I asked another question, this spiritual leader, Mac, what's the meaning of life? And he said, it's different for everybody. I mean, again, what do you put down the table to really help society? And the meaning is different for everybody. There's no general, this is the meaning of life. No, you have to figure out your own, and through a bit of a trek that might be painful.
And I'm pretty sure the meaning of life is not to put your name on buildings. Um,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure the meaning of life has nothing to do with your bank account. Um,
It's yeah.
uh, you know, my parents, my mother passed away 4 years ago now, and um, we had my father passed away almost 15 years ago. 16 years ago now, and he was cremated, and we've had his ashes sitting on the shelf for 15 years. Mom used to go between Ohio and Phoenix, Sun City, and she was getting ready to leave one time, and Dad's ashes are sitting out on top of the freezer in the back room. And I'm like, Mom, you can't leave Dad sitting on the freezer all winter. And she said, well, you take him. So I've got his ashes. They're down at our house there for several years after that. And then Mom passed away 4 years ago, and she was cremated, and they also had their dog cremated too. So we had they wanted to be buried together, which I thought was really
Yeah.
cool. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And the fact that they wanted the dog in there as well was it says a lot
Yeah.
about them. But we have a ceremony, and everybody comes back, and we tell great stories. And uh, my dad had, so we grew up on a farm. And I don't know if you know what post hole diggers are, but they're kind of this round shovel that have two handles. You dig down and you pull it apart, and you basically can dig a circular hole with them. That's how a post hole digger works. and
Okay.
and our farm at the time was right next to this graveyard down in this little town called Henrysburg, Ohio. That's where we lived, and our cows would get out because the grass in the cemetery was elite. I mean, that was good grass. And our cows and our fence line went, and our cows would break the fence to be able to get into that. So we were constantly running our cows out of the cemetery and digging and building fence over there. They'll find the weak spot. My dad, before he passed, he said, when I pass away, I want you to bury me in a I want you to set up post hole diggers, and I want you to he wanted to be buried on the fence line. He wanted to be in the fence. But we couldn't pull that off. The township trustees were not going to sign off on that. But we buried him with a post
Oh.
hole diggers on their gravesite that they had. And they have this very simple, it's not even a tombstone. It's a marking stone from our driveway. It says the Moxleys, and it's got this Ohio State. But my daughter drove through there the other day and took a picture because it's right next to my grandparents' grave, and took a
Uh-huh.
picture. And all of a sudden, the family chat erupts, um, remembering the day that we put them in the ground. And then it goes back to memories of them.
Yeah.
And you wonder, your life, the end of your life, the people who show up at the end of your life too many times are dictated by the weather that day. Okay. If it's raining and nasty, most people will choose not to be there. If it's nice, you might get a few people. And I hope that as we move through life, we can impact people to where at least when you leave this world, stories are left behind. I don't need my name on a
Yeah.
gravestone. I don't need my name on a building. I don't need my name anywhere else except on the hearts of the people I touch. And so, as we move through it and we think about life and stress and what's worth it and what are we going after, keep that in mind. You know, and again, I love your trip to Albuquerque as a point for taking off. We got very technical in the middle of this talk about GLP-1s and exercise and ketones and all these things, which are
Yeah.
kind of cool. It's what we do. But at the end of the day, we want to recover, we want to grow, we want to get healthier so that we can help other people. And so,
Yeah. Yeah, you want to become a better person. It doesn't mean whether it means you have to lose weight and you have to gain strength and you have to sleep better. At the end of the day, all of that ends up being you being a nicer, kinder, better person to
yeah,
the world around you. And that just makes a whole world of difference. And it's very interesting you mentioned, we talked about death a little bit, but another thing that the Gurudev was saying on stage, which was witty, but at the same time so true, how we live in this very stressful life. And then at the end of the day, we all say to those who pass, rest in peace. And he's like, we should be in peace while we're on earth, standing up,
there you
and
go.
not just when we're underground.
Yeah.
We should be in peace, and most of us aren't.
No,
And
it's
it's
hard.
so
It's a
true.
challenge. It's a challenge.
Yes.
Because we've talked about this. Our environment is pushing. The river that we live in is flowing
Yeah.
fast, and we can get pulled down. And our
Yeah.
challenge is that river's not going to change. We're in it. Okay. But we can get in a boat that we can then guide with the current and not fight the current, and let the current take us where it needs to take us, and along the way help some people along the way. And I think that's it's kind of interesting. I'm this weekend I'm going to my 45th high school class reunion. Um and Klaudia, I don't know how in the fuck I got this old, but it's just kind of weird to be going. I mean, I'm now 3 lifetimes beyond. And again, another part of the story. I was talking to one of our neighbors here that were in Howe, Indiana, where we're at, and this kid made some tough decisions when he was younger, and he spent some time behind bars. And he said, I basically missed my 20s, which are supposed to be the best. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I go, there is nothing about youth that is superior to a good adulthood. And I said, no offense, I'll take my 50s over my 20s and 30s any day. Okay.
Yeah.
The stress changes, everything changes, you get direction. But the critical thing is be present today. I have one of my friends, Dr. Ron Garbo, made this statement. He says, stress only exists whether we're fearful of the future or regretful of the past.
Yeah.
When we're in the present, there is no stress. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that statement.
That is true.
So
yeah. And it's so much, it's like you said, so easy to be stressed about so many things because of that river pushing against us. But if you have the right tools, we can navigate the river.
Yes, and that's what we want to do, is help you, find your boat, use that boat more effectively so that you can get down the river and enjoy the view. I mean, that's the best part about it.
Indeed.
Okay.
I'm going to call it a wrap on this one.
I say we call it a wrap too. We're getting far too emotional.
And I just want to call our listeners to subscribe and follow and ask us questions and recommend some topics if you've come across any type of subject that may be bugging you or isn't clear and want us to break it down. We're happy to.
We want to.
Make sure to reach out. Yeah.
Yes.
And we can find out more about us. I'm at longevityjournalist.com and Don's at trainrecoverwin.com.
Correct.
So it's easy.
If you have questions,
90% healthy,
you find us
everywhere.
both on LinkedIn too. If you search for us on LinkedIn, you'll see us both there, which is LinkedIn's a pretty good communication platform. I don't see the trolling crap on there as I do like on other social media. A
lot more professional.
Do you do TikTok?
A little bit I did. I go through waves. I never go all in. It's not my platform.
It's interesting to watch the platforms transition. We had Twitter, which was so good, and then it became X, and then I kind of feel like it's a dead platform right now. I don't feel like it's growing. And I wonder, is that going to happen with Facebook and the Meta brands? And then you look at the TikToks and all the stuff that's going on. I have a TikTok account. I don't look at it. I just don't have time. So
the stuff that we post over social, it gets posted on TikTok, but I don't have, it doesn't really align with the things I do to look at TikTok and consume TikTok. Not my style.
Be nice. That's what we do. We go through life.
Be
nice. Help that person next to you, regardless of their color, their gender, their situation in life. Just reach out and give a hand and help people step up rather than stepping on them. That's always the right decision.
Yeah, I think there's never regret for being nice. No. Or at least it never has for me.
No. Okay.
On that note,
be nice.
Go and be nice to someone.
Be nice, Klaudia.
We'll see you next week.
See ya.